Hello, everyone. I hope you can see my screen without my notes. Um, my name is Deborah Faust, and I am the director of MHANYS CarePath program and also the director of a new program, which is an adaptation of the CarePath program called Mental Health Community Partners. And I'm excited today to share with you a little bit about the program. And I want to mention that CarePath is a trauma-informed support tool. And at the Mental Health Association, we've been champions of educating communities across New York State about trauma and trauma-responsive care for about 20 years now through MHANYS Building Connections project. I also want to brag a little bit about the program. It's been selected to be one of 5 programs from across the country to participate in a project aimed at supporting frontline healthcare workers and their families nationwide. So MHANYS CarePath has continued to garner statewide and now national attention, and because of its relational approach to mental health and recovery. And if after learning more about CarePath and you find that you might be interested in being certified in this model, or you know somebody you think would, please reach out, because the national funding from the Brave of Heart Fund has afforded MHANYS the opportunity to offer certification at no cost if, upon certification, a CarePath coach offers at least 3 healthcare workers and their families CarePath. So I want to mention that healthcare workers include non-medical staff, home health aides, caregivers for aging population, hospice staff, behavioral healthcare staff, hospital, youth and adult residential center staff, school nurses, school social workers, counseling staff. This is really a great opportunity, and I hope you'll want to learn more after the presentation. But I want to thank you all for participating in this particular workshop. And I hope that you'll bear with me. You know, technology is always tricky, so I just hope it goes off without a glitch. Thank you. I want you to think about this for a second. You can choose to use your chat or not. You know, I always like to ask people this question, and it seems like kind of a no-brainer question, but for many of us, we've grown up with this individualized concept of our recovery, of our health and well-being. So I like to think about, you know, is your health and well-being in isolation of others? And I think yes, thank you, Lisa, we do need people. You're right. And I think this pandemic has really shown us just how social of a creature we truly are. Because, you know, think about somebody and they're not well. It impacts you, it impacts us. I mean, I know firsthand, and I'll talk a little bit about that coming up, but we are not islands unto ourselves, and our health and well-being is in relationship also not only to our families and our friends, but to our larger communities as well. CarePath is designed to assist youth and adults, and they may be experiencing a setback managing their behavioral health needs. They may have just been in crisis. Whatever the situation is, CarePath offers additional support also to their family members, their adopted families, foster families, biological families. It doesn't matter who they identify as their chosen supporters. And what makes it unique is that the youth or adult selects who they want to participate in the program with them. And like I said, it can be family members, it can be friends, it could be a grandma, aunt, uncle, or it simply could be their CarePath coach. And I've seen all different configurations of who shows up as their supporters. But CarePath, what I want to mention is that it's really appropriate for anyone who's experiencing a transition from being unwell to well. And the coach addresses the health of both the youth transitioning from unwell to well and their foster or adopting families. And they can all participate together in defining their own health and well-being. So often when a youth or adult is in crisis or experiencing a setback, family members are experiencing enormous stress and their own mental health can be compromised. In offering a coach, it kind of helps reduce stress, and it opens up some options for supporting the youth and the fostering or adopting family. And this relational perspective really helps us to reduce the stigma and opens up opportunity for some healthier conversations. I just want to mention a little bit about myself. I have a daughter who's managing a serious mental illness, and I am a person with lived experience managing my own depression and anxiety. And MHANYS CarePath offers that relational perspective on recovery. And for families like mine, that's one of the best protective factors for supporting family mental health and for us at being able to achieve and maintain our mind-body health. Now, my daughter, her serious mental illness requires a different level of need than my own. I've never been hospitalized for my mental health. MHANYS CarePath actually addresses those different levels of mental health needs within a family. And that's very, very helpful for families like mine. And when my daughter was in a hospital setting or when she was caught up in the justice system, upon entering the building to visit her, I used to think that everyone could hear my heartbeat. I felt like it drowned out my ability to listen or hear or comprehend what anyone else was saying in the room. My anxiety really kept me unable to concentrate and unable to comprehend because my brain was literally in crisis mode. So it's so helpful if there's a CarePath coach available to provide understanding about what's happening in the room, number one, and also about the process moving forward. CarePath is not a clinical program, although there are, self-management tools that are grounded in cognitive behavioral techniques, but there's no clinical language and there's no direct focus on specific diagnoses. CarePath really is all about focusing on removing that illness perspective that gets, us wrapped in fear and projection, and instead creating a wellness mindset, which I happen to believe is the most influential characteristic we can have for successfully managing any mind-body health need. So, I really feel it's important to keep reminding you, this is a relational perspective on recovery. And for families like mine, it keeps the family well. And for students, right, a CarePath coach can really support a student who may have experienced crisis or maybe had to leave school for an extended period of time, and now they want to reintegrate back into the school, right? So a CarePath coach can support that reintegration plan and partner with the school administration folks, with the student themselves, the family, and that can all be facilitated to ensure a more successful transition for the student. And that supports that continuous family engagement that is often so difficult between school and family. And because our cultural identity impacts our perceptions about mind-body health, when we consider our race, our ethnicity, our age, our sex, gender, and our placement within a family, all of those things impact how we define health and wellness in our lives. So a CarePath coach engages this person-centered planning, right, where everybody's self-identifying. So the student and their families are defining their own mind-body health needs, and that supports their cultural identity. And that brings their culture into their recovery plan as well. MHANYS CarePath, it literally removes the diagnosis from being the center of attention, right? And weighing in on every communication a family has. And I can testify to that from my personal and my professional work. Many youth and adults in recovery for behavioral health conditions will be the first to tell you they are tired of being considered the one with all the issues in the family unit. So CarePath literally supports them by removing that stigma of a diagnosis. And instead, it places everyone in the family in a conversation about the process involved in achieving and maintaining better health outcomes. Because they're all working on their own wellness strategies, the individual and their support network are developing more realistic expectations about the process, and they're learning the language of health and wellness together. I often tell families, and I can tell you I did this with my own family, consider how powerful it is to be in a room with your family members and your friends, and you're all defining your health and wellness in your life. right? You're doing that through the facilitation of a coach who's trained to offer you support and resources that are going to build your awareness of what really defines health and wellness in our lives. I have to tell you, not many families have had that opportunity, but it is an amazing opportunity. When my family did the CarePath program, we commented immediately that we had never been in a room together and talked exclusively about defining health and wellness in our lives. And it was just amazing. It really was. And I have 4 adult daughters. I should back up and tell you this. I have 4 adult daughters and 7 grandchildren. And when we did the CarePath together, it was my daughters and my eldest granddaughter, who was about, I think she was about 14 at the time, 14, 15. So it was really life-changing. And I think it's a great opportunity for any family unit, however that family unit is configured, it would work wonders. Now, the CarePath program also utilizes the continuum of wellness as messaging to participants that all mind-body health exists on this continuum, and that all mind-body health is always in movement. It's never static. So connecting youth and adults to the process of recovery as existing on this continuum, it reduces stigma associated with a lot of the behavioral health challenges that many people face, because we're messaging that all mind-body health recovery moves along this same continuum. And an example that I like to use is that I have a back injury. And sometimes when I feel well, I almost forget that I have a bad back. And then I start to notice developing symptoms. And if I'm not aware and listening to the wisdom of my body, I begin to feel pain and I feel ill. And then I may reach out to the doctor and start physical therapy. And in a couple of weeks, I notice that I'm in recovery and I'm moving toward the direction of feeling pain-free and well once again. So when youth and adults learn that all mind-body health moves along this continuum, they also learn that a return of symptoms exist on this continuum and that recovery may include active symptoms. And family members like my own, we gain an understanding that when our loved one is not well, they will move along on this continuum, and with support, they will be well again. And I have witnessed how understanding this continuum changes perspectives in families about mental health and illness and reduces that stigma. But most importantly, it offers families hope. You know, when families are in the CarePath sessions and reviewing the continuum, it's very helpful to know that, all right, your loved one is not well, they're ill right now, but they will move along and they will experience wellness once again. So I find that very helpful. And I wish that when my daughter, you know, had her first hospitalization, I wish somebody was walking me to the car and letting me know that she would experience wellness once again. And CarePath participants, they all review this continuum at every session. And this slide is really just highlighting some of the options that we've put in place for supporting a person's movement at each place on this continuum. A CarePath coach supports a person regardless of where they are on the continuum. They meet participants where they're at. And when you think about developing symptoms, right? We've built in mindful practices that are going to help build their awareness of developing symptoms, because they're going to be learning to connect to their mind-body health. And then if they do fall into illness, right, they have a mental health crisis plan. They've designed their options and their supporters and their connections to the community. And when they move over to treatment and use of wellness tools, they've identified specific support and they've identified specific supporters. They have mindful practices that they've been trying out, and they've learned to have a voice and a choice in self-advocacy. And then moving on to recovery, it's a step-by-step process. They're back into the principles of recovery. and they know that they need that ongoing engagement. And when they're well, they have their well-designed care path. And the program addresses health equity and the social determinants of health by utilizing these 8 dimensions. This is a holistic approach to overall mind-body health. And these 8 dimensions influence their outcomes. And it's a framework for incorporating specific treatment and tools to help them guide day-to-day decision, but also in managing any mind-body health need. Participants learn and become very much aware of the dimensions of their wellness that are currently supporting them. There's an exercise that they do at each session that pulls out the dimensions that are currently supporting them. And they learn how those dimensions or those areas in their life influence their movement on that continuum of wellness. So when individuals and families are identifying those dimensions that are providing them strength, it also becomes the starting point for addressing all of those areas and dimensions that jeopardize their health and well-being. Again, this is a strength-based approach. So participants participate in exercises that explore all of those 8 dimensions. They act as their guide, and they reveal to them the necessary resources and supports that they need to enjoy a sense of well-being. They also recognize that they've met people throughout their lives who may be managing chronic conditions and yet still maintain a sense of well-being in their life, right? So they're learning that you can experience, problems or have problematic issues in some dimensions, but you probably always have some dimensions of your health that are keeping you moving on that continuum of wellness. Coaches facilitate participants in taking their wellness temperature at every meeting. So the youth and their supporters are all scoring each of those 8 dimensions. And in that exercise, they're building, again, that awareness. And that confirms that mental health is multidimensional, and that incorporating the 8 dimensions of wellness into our daily thoughts connects us to why each area or dimension of our wellness plays such a role in our overall health outcomes. So ultimately, CarePath participants come to realize that mental health is multidimensional, and there is no separation between mind-body health. Those weekly temperatures recognize the development of symptoms earlier, and they also reveal what's influencing my temperature. It's a comprehensive understanding of what really defines health and wellness in our lives. Now, I want you to use your chat for this or unmute however you feel, but look over these 8 dimensions. I'm going to read each one to you, right? And I'm going to ask you to think about what dimension of your wellness, and just select one, that is currently a strength to your overall health and well-being. And think about your physical dimension, right? That's, are we exercising? Are we eating properly? Are we sleeping well? Okay, that dimension is very important to our lives, right? The spiritual dimension of our life, expanding our sense of purpose and meaning. That's a big, big indicator of supporting our health and well-being. And of course, the social dimension of our health. We've learned very much through this pandemic that social dimension is incredibly important for our sense of well-being, our mental health. We need to feel like we belong. We need to feel connected to the world around us. And then the intellectual dimension, okay, this is like our creative abilities, our ability to learn new things, new skills, new hobbies, right? That really supports us in our overall health. Our emotional health and well-being, right? Are we able to regulate our emotions effectively? Are we able to, have satisfying relationships? That's extremely important. And then occupational health, all right? Our personal satisfaction from the work that we do. And that doesn't have to be paid work. It can be volunteerism. It could be tutoring. It could be anything. But we want to have some personal satisfaction in that dimension of our lives. And then environmental health, our environmental health. Are we in environments that are supporting us, that are supporting healthy choices in our lives? And for many people, their immediate environment is not a safe space. Financial satisfaction with our current and future financial situations, right? These things, all 8 of these weigh into our ultimate sense of well-being. But understanding their influence in our lives is really important. So I ask you to put in the chat box, you know, what is one of the most, right now, currently, the most positive dimension in your life right now? Thank you, Annette. As an adopter, the social dimension is vital to my well-being. Financial, yes, many people, myself included, financial dimension can be incredibly frightening and set us off balance. But social is very important. Thank you, Meg. You know, let's face it, all of these dimensions impact one another, you know, and we need to be aware of what's going on in our life if we're going to manage good, solid mind-body health outcomes. Thank you. You know, the CarePath program, in the training that coaches receive, we do a lot of practice around deep listening. We have scenario work that we do, role plays, etc. And the purpose is that we're trying to get coaches to understand that we really have to tap into our heartfelt responses, because that's really what motivates us. And CarePath participants, they're moving through that continuum of wellness. They may be faced with change, decisions that may result in having to embrace change. And we know that change is difficult for all of us, and it brings about a lot of anxiety, fear of the unknown. But change is inevitable, especially in regards to moving through that continuum of wellness. So I wanted to take time out to show you this video, because this video is really all about accessing the intelligence of the heart. And I think those heartfelt responses, as this video, hopefully I'll be able to show you this. If not, I have a slide after that can make up for a little bit of it. But heartfelt responses, they really do help us intercept some of our chronic thinking, our anxiety, our depression, and it can really reroute some of our thinking and that negative dialogue that goes on. And for some people, it never turns off, right? So accessing the intelligence of the heart, it changes our lives, but it also helps us support other people. So now bear with me. I'm going to stop sharing this screen and I'm going to try to tap into this video. Cue. Okay. Before I go any further, could somebody let me know if they're seeing this?
This is the intelligence of the heart?
Yes.
Right. Are you seeing that on the screen? Great.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So now I'm going to try to pull this up and get it started.
The evolution of humankind has been hijacked by the human mind, and we have almost lost touch of the intelligence of the body altogether. By the time our children leave school, they have become chronic thinkers and they've been disconnected from their own bodies. And when someone says, listen to your body, they don't know what to refer to, because sometimes there's pain, there's trauma, and so forth. And when the body has stopped speaking a long time ago, there's very little to listen to. And perhaps the easiest access point for anyone would be to access the intelligence of their own heart, because the heart is responsive to this moment. It cannot be otherwise. The moment anything happens externally, our breathing changes, and because our breath is so intimately linked with our own hearts, the heart will change as well. If you look back at the theory of neurovisceral integration, it's the cardiac pulmonary response that was the first perception of reality. So our hearts perceive before anything else does. And so when we are able to intercept this chain of iterative thoughts right at the center of it, we're able to shape all of our thought patterns and respond in the qualities of the heart, which is love, compassion, connection, all these beautiful intentions that shape the way we think, that changes the outlook of humanity itself. So we're not driven by the chronic syndromes of the mind, which sometimes is chronic fatigue, chronic thinking, depression, anxiety, so forth. We are coming from a deep state of harmony.
Thank you. And now stop this share and get back into slides. There we go. Let's see here. Okay. I just find that, you know, as a person that I consider myself to be a chronic thinker, nothing has been able to really reduce that in my life more than the practice of self-compassion. And in the CarePath program, we do a lot of focus on that practice because it really is about, you know, becoming mindful. We have a lot of mindful activities in this program, and learning those mindful practices helps us also be able to incorporate the practice of self-compassion in our lives and really start tapping into our heart's intelligence. And they've done a lot of research in the last few years, and I bring that information to the CarePath program because I believe that that is what will motivate us to be able to do a lot of the hard work that is required of somebody who needs to manage a condition, be it chronic or not chronic. We need to have that relationship with our bodies and our mind and our spirit. So I really do believe that this is an important piece to the puzzle for so many individuals and youth. And if they're learning this young, oh my gosh, I just feel like that is such an amazing gift to learn this early in our lives instead of waiting until you're my age to learn it. But we do a lot of training on that in the training, the certification training. This was just the slide that I would use if I couldn't show that video, but I'll just, you know, tell you that, you know, shaping our thoughts really helps move people along on the wellness continuum. And it supports us cycling through the stages of change with less ambivalence. And it does help to intercept that chronic thinking. So what is the role of a CarePath coach, right? Okay, they offer, in the CarePath program, they offer 5 in-person sessions or a hybrid of, you know, on and offline sessions. And it's all within a 90-day period. And each session is 60 to 90 minutes, and they are named, these sessions are named for their intention. These sessions all represent their itinerary for their path to better mind-body health. The online sessions are offered in 2 parts if folks choose that, and they can go through the program as often as they like. And the 90 days are incredibly flexible because anyone that has ever partnered with families knows that life happens, and CarePath coaches are trained to understand that. And a coach will offer follow-up between those sessions, and they'll also model healthy boundaries by offering participants their availability during the week so that there's total transparency. And a coach will meet participants wherever they are, so flexibility is very much expected in this program. And CarePath incorporates the evidence-based practice of person-centered planning, but also incorporates some other best practices that are designed, again, to build awareness of mind, body, health needs. And CarePath coaches all receive a coaching manual, and that manual acts as their guide. And each CarePath participant receives a similar manual. And the sessions include all of the exercises listed on their slide. You know, they review family guidelines, they review the 8 dimensions of wellness, they score their 8 dimensions, they review their wellness temperature. They have wellness tools that they select. They review the continuum. They have a support, exercise that teaches them how to expand the definition of support in their lives, what qualities they need to look for in their supporters, etc. And then they have their wellness choices worksheet, which is something that they work on in between sessions. And session 5 includes their mental health crisis plan and their final care path, which again is resulting in a wellness mindset. So all of the exercises in the program are intended to be selected on the present situation that they're encountering, and all within a 7 to 10 day framework. Participants are practicing mindful techniques to build their awareness. They're practicing to avoid projections, staying in the present, and knowing when to press that pause button in their life. They learn that it's a step-by-step process for regaining their balance. And so often, youth and their families spend a lot of time focusing on past experiences, and CarePath supports them staying in the present and using all their energy for regaining their stability so they can move along again on the continuum and be well. So these exercises are generalized to reflect all styles and levels of learning, and the manual includes numerous resources, including a video library, a glossary of terms and concepts, state and national resources. It's really a wonderful resource. I have another 1.5-minute video to show you, and this is sending a powerful message in supporting others. You know, one of the things that CarePath coaches do is they try to hold that supportive space in the session for this individual. And what I want to also include is that the manual and the sessions themselves are incredibly structured to keep everybody from going off into directions that are not positive. And I just wanted to mention that. But this video opens the conversation about what constitutes support for the person that is trying to achieve their health and recovery, and also for their supporters. And it also asks us as supporters of others to consider what we need in a supporter in our own lives. So participants in the program are selecting support at each session, and that support document is in their manuals. And in that document, it asks them to consider the qualities they need. So this video does a nice job helping us consider what it really means to hold space for someone to feel whatever it is that they need to feel. So I'm curious if you're going to agree with me, but I just happen to love this 1.5 minutes. And I tend to mention to coaches, you know, you can show this at the very first session because it's kind of a conversation starter too for a lot of folks. So let's get this started here. Yeah, I really hope that, I just think the message is so important. One of the things that I often mention to CarePath coaches is that you're entering a family unit, however that family unit or support unit is in existence, and there's probably some pain and sorrow because let's face it, it's hard to be in a family unit and not experience pain and sorrow. And especially if your loved one is in crisis or has had a setback with their mental health, their behavioral health. So you're walking into some pain and sorrow. And if as a coach, you're not comfortable with your own pain and sorrow, right, then you're not going to be able to sit and really just be present for them. And so in the training, we do a lot of, work on, role plays around being able to feel comfortable with whatever you're feeling. And that's very important because so often, so many people that are in crisis, we can't eliminate their pain and sorrow. We can't, immediately, make their loved one well, right? That's not something we can do. So we're walking in feeling like, how much can we really help them? Well, we can really help them by providing that supportive space for someone to feel what they need to feel. And so I just really love this video, and I find that it really does drive home the point, not only to coaches in the training, but also to family members and to loved ones who are trying to be a support to another person. Does anybody want to share anything? Really, yeah, without judgment. Thank you, Lisa. It is important because, let's face it, I think these last almost 3 years have really taught us to be less judgmental about, our humanness. We're just all human beings, and we all are trying our best to have a good sense of mental health in our life, but it's not easy. And if you're a youth, right, and you're going through, difficult changes, be it with your family or be it with a transition to a new family or be it school, there's so much right now that youth are trying to wrap their minds around. And I think that we really have an opportunity as adults and as family members, as professionals and paraprofessionals, we have an opportunity to check in with ourselves and be comfortable with what we ourselves are feeling so that we can really show up and be present for other people. And there's so much opportunity now to learn more about practices that help us get back into our resting state. Because many of us are trauma survivors ourselves, and we're walking into a room where there's a lot of traumatic stress that may have happened. And so we need to be able to do that. And I believe the only way to do that is for us to have that practice of self-compassion active all the time, and also allowing ourselves to be human beings. Because the practice of self-compassion really teaches us that, what, you're a human being, and your pain and sorrow is shared by the whole, everybody has pain and sorrow. And it just keeps you out of that isolation of thinking like it's only me that's like this. I'm the only one with this problem, et cetera, et cetera. So I really love to bring that practice of self-compassion into the room with me at all times. It really does help. Okay, get to the next slide here. This is my favorite slide, and I have to tell you, I don't know how many times I've been asked, so what exactly is a CarePath, right? Well, the purpose of the CarePath sessions is to support awareness about what really defines mind-body health in our lives, and to be able to carry that information in our head and in our heart, the practices that will support maintaining wellness in our life. CarePath is not about just this list of things that I have to do. It's about developing a wellness mindset. And that mindset can guide us moving through the continuum of wellness throughout our lives, right? So when asked what is a care path, I tend to use the analogy of going on a hike. That's why I have the little hikers on the slide, right? A care path participants are going on a hike. They're going up the mountain of health and wellness, right? And they can only carry what fits in their backpack. So participants are asked to select 5 things that stand out as the most important for making it up that hike and maintaining their wellness mindset throughout the trip. So this slide is offering you a snapshot of what participants have actually been focusing on, right? So they've learned who their trusted supporters are. They've expanded the definition of support in their life, right? They've learned about those dimensions of their wellness that actually support them. They've identified support tools for those dimensions that may jeopardize their mind, body, health, and recovery. They've also identified treatment options and wellness tools that will help move them along on the continuum of wellness. And they've been introduced to some mindful practices that help reduce some of the negative feelings and help them learn how to press the pause button and respond compassionately to themselves and to others. So CarePath is really something that has to be held in your mind, body, and spirit. And it's something that you can utilize in practicing mind, body health throughout all stages of your life. Because an illness perspective, which has really been the dominant theme for years on mental health and substance use. And we've learned that, having that wellness mindset is a protective factor rather than getting more weighted down with negativity, illness perspectives that really are wrapped in a lot of fear. And that fear is anxiety provoking. So keeping a wellness mindset at the forefront of your life is going to be a tool that you'll carry in that backpack forever. So that's really what a care path is. We need less negativity. We need positivity in the world. And, in educational systems, they have what they call a growth mindset, right? Where they try to present to students that, don't say that, oh, I can't do that. I wasn't born tall enough to do that. I wasn't, the growth mindset is about really not letting limitations and definitions, stop you from trying it, and working towards it, and a wellness mindset is similar in that way. We all know people. I know I do. I've got a friend right now who I'm in awe of because she's struggling with a major terminal illness and has a wellness mindset. I mean, she has a lot of those dimensions that we went over earlier. She is struggling in those dimensions, but there's a couple of those dimensions, especially the spiritual dimension, that's really aiding her in moving forward. And she has a wonderful mindset. I am in awe. But I've also met other people. I've been fortunate in the line of work that I do. And as a peer myself, I've met a lot of other peers who live a quality of life while managing a chronic condition. And they've taught us a lot about recovery. And this program, CarePath, was built, really, the foundation was built upon the shared values of what the peer movement has taught us and what family members have taught us. And we brought together those shared values, and they are incorporated into the CarePath program. I like this slide too, because, it really speaks to a lot of individuals that grew up without healthy support or supporters and found themselves connecting to some unhealthy forms of support. And I can speak to that as a youth. I definitely did not grow up in an environment where there was any safe, supportive relationship to share my pain and sorrow with, right? So CarePath is really about supporting healthy support in our lives, right? And that's a huge game changer. And also, participants are learning to flesh out different forms of support that come into their life. And as this slide suggests, if we're not connected to healthy support, what happens, right? We'll connect to anything we can find. And a lot of folks that are, found themselves dealing with substance use, that's what happened. The support that they needed wasn't probably available. They wouldn't recognize it even if it was. And this is something that CarePath addresses. There are so many different forms of support that come into our lives and they are available to us, right? And they learn to expand on their opinions about what support really means for them. I wanted to introduce you to the CarePath logic model. All it is really is just a quick blueprint, and it leads us visually to the process involved in achieving the program results. And as you can see on this slide, there are inputs, which is basically nothing more than the entrance to the program, like who is entering the program, and referrals into the program, the coach enters, the youth or adult, the families, other supporters, they're all entering. So they're the input, right? The activities are the sessions, the manuals, the workshop, and other resources throughout the program. And then the outputs are how we collect the data, from the attendants, developing a care path. Did they develop a mental health crisis plan? And did participants identify and utilize wellness tools? So the inputs, the activities, and the outputs, they all support the 4 outcomes listed on this slide. And what we're really hoping for is that, individuals and their support network will increase their knowledge of mental health and substance use disorders from a wellness perspective and get rid of that illness perspective. And then the second outcome, we want them to be able to identify and practice self-management tools. And that, again, developing that wellness mindset. And then the third outcome is we don't want people in the hospital. We don't want them going back in. We don't want young people going back into a hospital setting. We don't want unnecessary ER visits, right? We want to get people well. And then the fourth one is we want them to feel like they have a successful transition from being unwell to well, right? That isn't going to frighten them if they do experience a return to symptoms. And we want them to have a transition to their family and community that is the least stressful. So we want that reduction in stress. So that's the program's logic model. For certification in this model, currently there are 112 CarePath coaches certified across the state. And I do want to mention that the New York State Office of Mental Health has funded training staff in some of their facilities in this model. And we just received this year in 2022, additional funding to create a program which is an adaptation of MHANYS CarePath, and to make it more directly aimed at people living with serious mental illness. And in youth, we want serious emotional disturbances in youth. So that new program is called Mental Health Community Partners, and it is going to have a lot of the features of MHANYS CarePath. The Office of Mental Health really loves CarePath, so they wanted to have a lot of the same foundation, but more directly aimed at people living with serious mental illness. So this coaching, the MHANYS CarePath certification, will be the same for the Mental Health Community Partners program that we're developing right now. So with that certification, there's 21 hours of a 3-day in-person training, which we haven't had much to do with since COVID. And then there's 15 hours of online instruction, and it includes a little bit of self-directed assignments. And then, of course, with certification, you're going to get all of your manuals, access to all your program materials, spreadsheets, support forms. It's all, you get a code, you go up onto the MHANYS CarePath website, and you can download everything you need to make this program work. And then we developed a family psychoeducational curriculum called Recovery and a Wellness Mindset. It's a 90-minute workshop, or it could be a 3-session support group. And that was designed to offer either after the 90 days or sometime after the 3rd or 4th session. And I also recommend, because I've given the recovery and wellness mindset to educators and they really like it. So it could be for professionals and paraprofessionals as well. It's a wonderful, I call it continuing ed from CarePath. It's like, all right, they're starting to learn the language. They've got this whole health perspective going on. And now we need them to have continuing education. And that's what this workshop helps do. And then there's 20 renewable clock hours from Oasis for CASAC credentialing, and 20 renewable credit hours for New York State peer support specialists and family peer advocates and youth advocates upon certification. And then of course there's support and technical assistance, and we do webinars and newsletters and you know, respond to technical assistance. And also all CarePath coaches are offered to come to our annual conference. So we really try to keep the CarePath coaches receiving continual education about health and wellness as well. And CarePath is Medicaid billable under core community-oriented recovery and empowerment services. And care managers can really help determine which core or which HCBS, which is home and community-based service, qualifies. But I can tell you that MHANYS CarePath program is billable under the Family Support Services section. And that means that if you have a youth who's on Medicaid, their family unit, you know, be it, you know, fostering, adoptive, or biological, can attend this program, I know, free of charge. So there is a lot of benefits to having this Medicaid billable component. You know, managing recovery, and I can speak from both a mental health recovery and also a physical recovery from my back, they both require the same exact thing. And that is for me to have a wellness mindset and for me to be tapped in to what my body is telling me, okay? So it does require that wellness mindset. It does require us to expand that definition of support, you know, and really understand what we need in our supporters, okay? But consider that if a youth or adult has family, has friends, and they all receive the same message, the same exercise, the same program, they're all learning the language of health together. And that in itself debunks any stigma that might be happening within and outside the family, but it also builds their resilience together. And I can speak from my own family by telling you that before CarePath, there was a lot of internal, you know, I felt a lot of guilt and a lot of shame, but also I felt very alone in showing up for my daughter. Because what happens sometimes in families when there's a crisis of any kind is we start turning on each other. We start blaming each other. We start, because when you can't fix something, sometimes it's just, you know, everybody starts turning on each other. And then again, what happens is that person that needs the support has people showing up in their lives that are full of anxiety, of guilt, and all kinds of feelings that are going to interfere with their ability to really be present for their loved one. So I just can't speak enough for having this relational perspective in recovery. Yeah, attitude is everything to physical healing, because, you know, even with my back, you know, I remember when I initially injured my back, I was in my 40s and I was a cyclist. I was very proud that I would go on weekend rides and they would cover 150 miles in a weekend or more sometimes. And I was very proud of that. And it was the one thing I did that I thought, I never was into sports as a child. I never was really, you know, exceptional in any one thing, right? And so I always said, gosh, I'm not really any good at any one thing. And then suddenly in my 40s, late 40s, actually it was, 49 when I got my first bike. And I remember like, oh, wow, I'm finally really good at something. And then I had a serious fall, a serious injury, and, you know, had to do a lot of changing in my life, a lot of changing. And some of it was really sad to me because I love biking. So, but, to make a point about, our attitude being so vital to our physical healing is that, the first thing I said to my surgeon was, can I at least ride my bike like 20 miles? Because I couldn't imagine not riding my bike. And he said the perfect thing. He goes, can you wait until at least until a week or two till my stitches? And I said, yeah, as a joke. But the other thing he said to me, which really helped support my attitude, was I said, so what should I do, doc? What kind of exercises, and he looked at me and said, you're the expert on your own body. He said, but I will tell you this, think like a shark and never stop moving. And unlike some people who went out of the hospital that day with a laundry list of things that they can and cannot do, I went out with that one sentence, think like a shark and never stop moving. So that I practiced that. I walked every day. I still do, actually. But I'm a big walker, but I do exactly that. So that attitude is really, really important to our physical healing, but it's also important to our mental health. So, I often say to the coaches, you're modeling, right? You're modeling some of this that you want to you can't tell people what to do, but you can model the behavior of positivity. You can model the language of health, right? You can be very cautious and aware of your choice of words, et cetera, et cetera. And this is all stuff that we go over in the training. The takeaway that I want to leave you with on this program is that, of course, the foundation is a relational perspective. What happens to someone else, and I often use the example of an African proverb, they believe very much that what happens to you happens to me. They are not at all thinking of a separate, we're individuals and we don't need each other kind of thought, which I grew up with some of that, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, you're responsible for your own, health and well-being, all of that. And this is just a complete Ubuntu. Thank you, Meg. I couldn't think of the word. You're right. And it is, I am because we are. That's what Ubuntu means. Yes. I actually have a degree in Africana studies, and I just drew a blank. Thank you, Meg. That's funny. The next takeaway is that, what again is so wonderful about this program is that participants are self-identifying everything, right? Coaches are not going in with an agenda, right? And in some of my early direct care work, I always had an agenda. And when people were talking, I was thinking about how I was going to get them what they needed to do, blah, blah, blah. I had a laundry list of things. And this is a real departure from that mindset, because we are really looking for them to self-identify. And there's no clinical evaluations. There's no prescribed instructions. There's a lot of subtlety around motivation. And that is something that CarePath coaches are trained to be very much aware of. How can we motivate another human being, right? What are some of the ways? And I showed you the video on heart intelligence, because I believe that is definitely one way. But I also believe that we have to show up and know our role, and our role is nothing more than a supporter to another human being, because relationship, right, is really the foundation of a trauma-informed approach. A safe, emotional, and physical relationship it's the cornerstone for everything else that's going to come along. So there's no prescribed instructions. And the interconnectedness of those 8 dimensions really support family mental health, and they support the facilitation of wellness tools. They support the facilitation of what I call community mapping, knowing what's in your community that will support that particular dimension in your life. And these are the things that are happening for them. And then person-centered planning is an evidence-based practice. It's wonderful. In the mental health advocacy world, we've been privy to that for a long time, thanks to peers telling us what works and what doesn't work. So person-centered planning and applying that trauma-informed approach really keeps the program where it needs to be at all times. So that's my takeaway. And now, I just want to open it up to some questions, because I just hope that this presentation gave you a little glimpse of this small little program and how much of a long arm it has in getting families where they need to be. And it's really wonderful to support our youth with this type of messaging. And please reach out if you're interested in the certification that I mentioned earlier. Please reach out because that particular grant is affording us to offer certification at no cost. And typically the cost for certification on this program is about $2,000 a person. So that's a huge savings. If you're interested at all or know someone that would be, you don't have to be a frontline worker to be a CarePath coach. And again, that frontline worker is a very broad definition. So I'm going to open it up and see if there's anybody that would, like to ask questions. I'd be happy to answer any that anyone might have. Feel free to unmute. I mean, we don't have that many people, so, if you wanted to unmute, that would be great too. If not, you can put them in the chat. And, CarePath wasn't designed for any one configuration of what defines family. It really isn't. And it can be for anyone. It really can be. It doesn't mean it can be for fostering families. In fact, I worked in foster care briefly in my career early on. And I used to say all the time that I wish that there was more focus on the mental health and wellness piece. That was something I always thought was lacking a little bit. And that was years ago. So it might have changed since then. But, I would love to see foster families receive this kind of support. I'd like to see adoptive families. This is all about transition. In fact, one of the brochures says that it's a transition support tool, because it's really about any type of transition. Yes, it is for foster parents. Absolutely. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter, what the configuration of a family is. In fact, I want to share this with you because I think it's such a powerful message. As a pilot for this program, I piloted with Capital District Health Physicians, CDPHP, and they asked me to do the pilot with families that had a loved one who had been hospitalized 3 times or more in 1 year. So as you can imagine, there were some very high level needs that were coming to me as a coach. And then I said to myself, you know what? I want to see if this would be applicable to like someone that doesn't even have a home, right? So I live in the city of Schenectady. I'm very friendly with a couple of our homeless population here and have been for years. So when I was doing the pilot, I said, would you be interested in, participating in this program? It was 2 of them, it was, and they were both, best friends. And they said, yeah, sure. So, I showed up at the library, with my manual, with their manual, wondering if they'd show up. And, they were an hour and a half late, but I knew that they would be. So I waited. And what happened was they immediately told me that they don't want to be in a home. They're not looking for housing. They like their lifestyle, except, and that they probably won't quit drinking alcohol. They were very frank with what they, and I said, oh, no, don't, this isn't about me, this program's not going to tell you what you need to do. That's not what this is about. You know, we're here to learn more about what really defines health and wellness in our lives. And that's going to look a lot different than what what you're expecting. So to make a long story short, about the third session in, one of them fell, hit their head, and passed away. And the other one stayed. Terry ended up staying. So when I was meeting with him, I said, tell me something, this is where the motivation becomes so strong in change in our lives. I said, tell me something that, number one, that I don't know about you, but number two, tell me something that you were really good at growing up, that everybody knew you about, something that you did that was like special to you within your family, friends, or neighborhood, or whatever, And he said, oh, you know what? He goes, I was known in my family as the swimmer because I was such a good swimmer. I loved water, right? So I said, you know what? That's really funny because I go to the pool every morning at 7 o'clock in the morning and it's free. If I get you swim gear, would you be interested in going? So he says, oh, yeah. If you get the stuff, And I said, well, meet me at the corner of Stewart's. And if you're there, you have to be there at 7. Now you have to realize he hasn't been up at 7 o'clock since he was, probably since he was 9 years old. So I was like, it's 7 in the morning. You've got to, Terry, that's, he goes, no, I'll be there. So 3 weeks go past. I go past Stewart's. He's not there, but I've got the book bag in my car with his stuff in it. So I know if he does say yes. Well, about 3 weeks later, he's at the corner going, and he goes, do you have my swim trunks? And I said, yeah, jump in. So I took him to the swim meet, with me, the open swim. And at the open swim, you have to know that these people that I'm swimming with are seniors predominantly, right? Retired seniors, and they're all swimming. Well, they wrapped him in the best case management I've ever seen in my life, right? I mean, within a month, I was no longer picking him up and dropping him off. They were, right? They were bringing him to get his teeth done. They were doing case management without even knowing that they were doing case management. But to make a long story short, that motivation of tapping into something that was a positive, that he did well, that he had a fond memory of, put him in a position to change his life. And within a year, he had his own studio apartment. He had health care in place, he had his teeth worked on. He had friends. He's an active, he's in the pool. He was until COVID all the time. And it's changed. He lives 2 streets from me. And here was a person that told me, I like my life. I'm not interested in changing it, right? And no one asked him to. No one ever asked him to. So motivation is a huge piece to the puzzle in our lives. And it really can drive us to all the things that we try to do in case management. But without the motivation, a lot of times you're just spinning your wheels. And so coaches are trained in this, and it's really effective. But I just think, yeah, way to go, Terry is right. I mean, I am in shock every time I see him, because I see him all the time, really, when I go, I'm walking around the neighborhood, he's always out. But I'm always like, you're such a miracle to me. You taught me so much, and he reminds me, he goes, but you asked me to be in that program. You asked me to be in that program, and you thought I could do it. And I said, no, I wanted you to be in, and he still has some of his friends in the neighborhood. And he told me just recently that he hasn't completely stopped taking in alcohol, but he has reduced it to, like a couple beers. For him, that's huge. And so his quality of life is different. And he taught me so much. He really did. And I just wanted to leave you with that, because it just proves that, program like CarePath is applicable on all levels of need. It really is. And I hope that you'll find some interest and pass this information along to others, because I think it would be helpful for foster families. I think adoptive families are going through a transition, and the biological family is going through a transition as well. So let's face it, I mean, this is something that they all need. And I just thank you for coming to my workshop and listening to me. And I didn't have my poll questions and all that, so I apologize to make it a little bit more engaging. But thank you for attending. And I'm probably earlier than I need to be, but you know, that might be a good thing for you. So thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank
for
you,
coming.
Deborah.
Thank
This
you,
was so
Deborah.
great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And
Thanks for-
Deborah, and your contact information, I know you had it up on the screen. Did you want to put it up once again, or do you want me to put it in the chat for everybody?
Would you put it in the chat for me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, please reach out, you know, and again, I think this is, you know, I think you're going to hear a lot about CarePath because the Department of Health, I mean, the Office of Mental Health has really taken to it and using it in their facilities and have plans on putting it in, you know, all over the place. So it's a good time to get in. My point in saying that is a good time to get in on this because I think there'll be sustainable funding for it in the future as well.